and it was somewhat sort of an obscure thing, but the requirements were simply to find a historic area in your community and find out about it, hike it, restore part of it, publicize it a little bit. So knowing a little bit about all this, we took the Cub Scout troop out and we started looking at the monuments and the battle sites up and down North Point Road. At that point, very little, if nothing, was done. Waller Lord had published a book by Dawn's Early Life. When you read Waller Lord's book and you walk the trail, you realize that Waller Lord, although he is from Maryland, never came down here. He's got the geography all wrong. And that was just the start of the head scratching and one thing or another that went along with playing with this Historic Trail Award, because there was so much, when the first part it was so little that was really done on it, and so much of the little that was done was screwed up or hearsay, and it was just simply a case of, could we, it was begging for something like a trail guide, like the C&O Canal Trail Guide. This is where it is, this is what happened here, now walk up the road 0.3 miles and you'll be at the next site, and so forth. So it wound up where one of those was developed. The Historical Society stepped in, Van Womer and his crew, this is going all the way back, this is 30 years ago. Womer and his crew stepped in and said, yeah, that's pretty nice, we'd like to publish that. And it's been sitting on a bookshelf and sitting on a for sale rack now for 30-some years. Occasionally it gets revised. It was revised the last time about 2 years ago with a preface anticipating the bicentennial. What I didn't realize then, and in all the years that I have been playing with this thing, what I didn't realize was the enormous amount of new information that would come rolling out as a result of this bicentennial celebration. A new perspective of the whole conflict has been presented, a lot of new details. So one of the big things about the Battle of North Point is to literally put it in context with what was going on at the time. Most of us know that we had 4 regiments were shipped over here from the other side in the spring, March, April of 1814. With the successful completion of the war in Europe, they had these leftover regiments and they were going to come over here and clean up in America. This was basically what all the books up to, say, 2-3 years ago have said. You know, the war's over there, they bring all these, quote, veterans regiments over here, and now we're really going to put the hammer down and take care of the Americans and so forth. With the internet, with access to all the regimental histories and the Royal Museums, with access to the correspondence between General Viscount Lord Wellington and the Prime Minister at the time, we now see it with a slightly different point of view. They weren't sent over here, those regiments weren't sent over here so much to put down the insolent Yankees as much as to hide the regiments to keep them from being disbanded when they went home to England. The problem was that the military action was over in Europe, but Wellington and most of the people, the boots on the ground at the time could see that the people, the French, the Bourbons who were taking over, were really messing it up, and they didn't have any concept of winning the hearts and minds of the French, and they were really screwing up the successful overthrow of Napoleon. Napoleon's replacement was worse than Napoleon, so the French weren't happy, and there was, like I said, the Brits could see that there was going to be problems, and they were very hesitant about pulling out their troops. However, at the same time, England had been at war for over 10 years. If this all sounds a little bit familiar, guys, just goes to show you history repeats. England had been at war for 10-some years, plus years. The people had been taxed real hard for this, and they were sick and tired of it. The war's over. Now we can reduce the size of the armies, the navies. Let's go home. We got this little thing over there that really doesn't mean anything anyway. Let's reduce the number of people. Okay. So Wellington implies. Never spells it out, but it looks like this is the way it went down. Wellington and the Prime Minister worked this deal up. Instead of sending the regiments home and having them immediately disbanded, they would send them over here with the understanding that they would not take any unnecessary chances over here. Specific orders: never take any unnecessary chances. For years we've been wondering about what if he would have, this battle here, what if they would have pursued it? What if Ross had been killed? What if Provost up at Plattsburgh had walked in and taken the town? And so forth. And in all cases they showed a timidity, a lack of the lion courage you saw in France France, Spain, and Portugal. These weren't the British officers you're used to seeing, and then it was like, what, right? Big question. Now it seems to be that they were sent over here to store them someplace. Now there are exceptions to this. New Orleans, an exception, which, if you look real close, you find out that the regiments were served here, and it looks to me like, that's personal, it looks to me like New Orleans is payback. They lost a lot of guys here, and all they got for their actions here is a couple feather beds that they stole out of the farmhouses on this peninsula, and not much else, right? And all the officers in the regiment, all the staff officers are replaced for the New Orleans action. And okay, now we're going to show these guys what we're made of. And unfortunately, they ran into a buzzsaw named Andrew Jackson down there, and they were, for the most part, decimated. They had something like 70–80% casualties. That is one factor. Okay, they weren't trying all that. The second thing in context is the big question that gets asked: why didn't Ross immediately after the battles down at Washington, why didn't he come right on up here? He couldn't. In order for him to bring his troops up immediately, he would have had to have the water side, the naval support. eventually would 3-4 weeks later. They didn't have that. They would have had to somehow or another pin down Fort McHenry, either take McHenry or keep them well pinned down so that people couldn't come out of the harbor. And once they committed to going up this way, they couldn't come out of the harbor, get behind them, and cut them off. So they needed the naval half of the operation in place and ready to go. They weren't in place. Gordon, Captain Robert Gordon of the Seahorse, took the bombardment squadron off the Potomac. At the same time, Ross landed down in the Patuxent. When Ross was going up by land and hit Bladensburg, Gordon was taking the 5 bomb catches and the rocket ship, the Erebus, and a schooner. Well, it was 7 altogether. The Seahorse, a schooner, and 4 bomb ships and the Erebus. Okay. He sailed them up the Potomac, upstream, no pilots. Every sandbar that was in the river, apparently they did. It was slow going. They had to catch themselves. Remember, this is no motors, it's all sail. And they had to work their way up the Potomac, upstream, about 100 miles from the mouth of Potomac to Washington. They got there a day after Ross left. Ross now comes back through Bladensburg, back down to Benedict, down to Patuxent, and comes back to the fleet. Meanwhile, when he's halfway back to the fleet, Gordon shows up at D.C. Okay, now, oops, missed the party. And then he looks across the river, and there's Alexandria in all its splendor. Beautiful town. Warehouses are full of tobacco, cotton, you name it. And there's all these boats that are sunk. And you look real close, and nothing wrong with them. All the rigging's in place and one thing another, they're just sunk alongside the pier. So anyway, they drop anchor off of Alexandria, point all the guns at them from the bomb catches and so forth. And the white flag comes out from Alexandria, and America negotiates for terms. There's no way they don't have any defense whatsoever against these ships. A few hours worth of bombardment and the town will be leveled. No question. He's got them cold. So they negotiate for terms. Gordon's terms was quite simple. I want all the boats up. I want everything in the warehouses on the boats. And anything I deem war material, I get. Right? And you leave me alone. It takes them more than a week to get the boats up. They get 22. That's 6 ships, 5 brigs, and the rest lesser boats. Up, pumped out, and loaded with tobacco, cotton, anything that wasn't nailed down, including some wallpaper that they found in a couple of the houses that really looks like they stripped that out. Feather beds, furniture, anything that they could get and cram into these boats, they did. Now comes the interesting part. They came up with 7. They went back with 29. 5 of the ship we had, the biggest boat they had was their frigate, the 36-gun Seahorse. They had 6 ships the size of the Seahorse, plus another 5 or 6 brigs, that's 2-masted, that are the size of the bomb catches, and miscellaneous boats. And they've got the crew, the initial crews for the initial 7 boats. which means that the cabin boy, congratulations, you're now captain of this boat here, right? They were stretched so thin they were transparent, okay? It was that thick. The vessels probably wound up with about 10, 12 men apiece to man them. Now, the only thing they got going for them is they're going downstream. That's the good news. The bad news is if it gets away from you, bang, you're back on a sandbar. And you don't know where the sandbars are. So then you gotta, to get her off, you gotta put men out into a dory.